Today on the Dennis Michael Lynch Show, we're going to have a candidate running for Florida governor. His name is James Fishback. He's an interesting guy. There's a lot of bad things being said about him, and he's hanging in there. So I figured, let's give him a chance to talk and clear the air and leave it up to you to decide. Is he a con man, or is he just as pure as the New York snow? Probably a bad example, but it's all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. I'm going to bring in James Fishback. He is running for governor of Florida. He is going up against Byron Donalds, who is backed by the president of the United States. Either way, James announced that he's running for governor, and he has attacked Byron Donalds something terrible. And at the same time as James is getting attacked left and right. So here is James. So first thing we need to know is we got your age. You're 30 years old, which is sort of young in the world of politics, but I wouldn't want somebody holding age against me, saying that I'm too old at 56. So at 30 years old, may I ask you, are you married?
I am not married.
You're not married. Okay. And you have lived in Florida your entire life?
I have. I'm a fourth generation Floridian. My great-grandfather ran a small hotel on Fort Lauderdale Beach. My grandfather ran head of cattle in Okeechobee. My father drove the city bus in Broward County, where I was born and raised. So this has been my home. My campaign, Dennis, is premised on the idea that Florida is our home, not a playground for property developers or AI data centers or any of that nonsense.
I like that. I'm not going to deny that. And since I've lived here, it's coming in on 6 years. Since I've lived here, there has not been one single thing that he's done to where I would say, typical politician. He's been God sent. And I mean, no offense to you, but if I could anoint him king, I would, because I'm very concerned that my state is going to go from being great to less than great. So when you say you're fourth generation Floridian, what part of Florida do you live in now, if you don't mind me asking?
I live in the Eastern Panhandle, Madison County, small town of about 3,000 people. I got a 100-year-old home right across from the courthouse. I agree with you, by the way. The only thing I might disagree with the governor on is term limits. If he could run for a third term, I wouldn't even think for a second about being in this race. I don't think Byron Donalds would either. There's a real beauty to what he's done. During COVID, he's the only one who actually stood up for us, looked at the science, didn't play the game of politics, didn't bend the knee, sure as heck not to George Floyd, but not to Deborah Birx or Anthony Fauci, or even to elements of the Trump administration that were pushing the lockdown agenda. And so I say it with respect to the governor. I've never met him, never spoken to him. I think he's the greatest governor in Florida history. He'll go down as one of the greatest governors in America. And I can't imagine what the last nearly 8 years would have looked like if someone like Andrew Gillum had been in there, now knowing what we know about him. But that guy would have cracked under pressure. I mean, he would have just folded. He would have locked the state down. You'd have been arrested for going to church. Your kids would have been out of school for nearly 2 years. And so Ron DeSantis, we owe him, and the First Lady as well, a debt of gratitude. I wish he could run for a third term. Sadly, he can't. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't see myself running for governor in January of this year. I didn't see myself running for governor until I had a long conversation with Erica and Byron Donalds at dinner in Naples on August 18th. And I walked away convinced that these people are utterly unqualified to lead the third largest state in the country, especially after the governor has given us what the governor has given us. And so I'm not a political person. I think if I knew I had a future in politics, I would have voted in some of our primaries and would have been more active and checked the right boxes. But people digging in my past, gosh, I would have cleaned things up a lot sooner if I'd known that I was going to run for governor. But what I'm asking people for is an opportunity to earn their vote. I'm never going to ask you to blindly trust me. That's why I said in my announcement video last week that I'm going to visit all 67 counties over the coming months, and not to give stump speeches, not to speak off a teleprompter, but to maybe give 10 minutes of prepared remarks of my vision and plan, and then to take 30, 40 questions in a row. No questions off limits. I know you're going to ask me some tough ones here, Dennis.
Yeah.
The last thing
but I'm going to do it politely.
No, and I respect it. And I want to be challenged, but I'll just say this.
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Governor
Mhm.
DeSantis did that for us. We got to keep the wheel spinning. And
All
so
right.
I view my job, my platform as twofold. Keep the DeSantis wheel spinning, which is to say, keep Florida free from DEI, radical gender ideology, voter fraud, Soros-backed prosecutors, special interest coming and try to buy up Tallahassee and turn our state into some sort of financialized capital like Byron Donalds says. That's the first pillar, is keep the DeSantis wheel spinning. The second, Dennis, is to really tackle affordability in a long-term, meaningful way. There's a lot to it. I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but I view my campaign as preserve the DeSantis wins, build on them, and then really tackle this long-standing issue of affordability. And that won't be easy.
Well, we're going to get to affordability in a second. I'm going to give you a chance to speak about all the things you want to do for Florida, and I'm going to do that before we start going into the mudslinging that has been going on. I'm going to put that at the end, just so this way you know, okay? So I'm going to give you every opportunity to make your case before, you know, we get to the ugly stuff. Because look, everybody has ugly stuff. If it was reverse and you were filming me, you were recording me, you were asking me questions, you know, I can tell you some of the questions you could ask, and I would have to answer for them. But let's put that off.
And just so we're clear for the record,
Yeah.
I don't know the questions. I've never given you any limits on what you can or can't ask, right?
No. Anybody who knows me well, James, anybody listening knows that would
never be the case.
That could go unsaid. You don't even have to say that.
100%. I just wanted to make sure that for everybody, that
it's all good. I would never do that. So not even if you paid me. So let's go to the dinner, because I think that I could knock out two birds with one stone. I was going to ask you why and what makes a 30-year-old guy say, I'm going to run for governor, versus I'm going to run for state election, a state office, and, you know, like a state representative, or even U.S. Congress or something like that. Why go all the way into the fire pit? Now, you say that Byron and his wife went to dinner with you, and that based on that dinner, you said to yourself, I got to do this myself. Explain that dinner, if you don't mind. If you kind of give us a little bit, you know, make it a movie. Where were you? Why were you there?
Sure.
You know, what was it all like? What was the purpose of the meeting? And then what was said that made you leave and say, I got to be the next governor of Florida?
Well, I don't want to, it wasn't that cinematic in the sense that I walked out of there thinking I was going to be the next governor of Florida or run. I was walking out thinking they're utterly unqualified and I need to think. And then I went and spoke with other folks who were thinking about running. We'll talk about Lieutenant Governor Collins, who I think is a brilliant man. Let me just give you the backstory. I first met Erica Donalds in December of last year, so about a year ago. And I think we follow each other on X and we had exchanged some direct messages. We had gotten coffee in early January, just talking about education and my nonprofit Incubate Debate. And I had seen her at different events. We'd gotten coffee when we had been in DC or been in Florida, maybe seen her 3 or 4 times. And I was asked to moderate a fireside chat with Byron Donalds at the local REC, my local Republican Executive Committee in Madison County, just 5 minutes up the road. And in preparation for that, and in addition to wanting to learn more about Byron's candidacy outside of the fact that he's endorsed by Trump, which he won't shut up about every 10 minutes, is I asked for a dinner. So I'm going to be in Naples on August 18th. Let's go to Capitol Grill. We had dinner there, just Byron, his wife, Erica, and I. And I really, that was the first time I got to see the real Byron Donalds outside of the Fox News hits and the Twitter, and really ask him questions to get to the heart of his agenda. One of the earliest signs in the dinner. And by the way, I'm not playing this game where dinners are off limits and private conversations are off limits. I'm not part of that. I don't have any allegiance to the lobbyist and talent. You shouldn't be talking. No, I'm going to talk about it. People of Florida care. First thing is he ridiculed the governor and James Uthmeyer for Alligator Alcatraz. He called it a stunt. He called it a waste of money. And I tried to understand it. He says, well, they're never going to get reimbursed. He said they're never going to get reimbursed. And lo and behold, as we know, Dennis, they got reimbursed every single penny. And what I told the attorney general when I saw him in Madison County, he was speaking and I was speaking. I said that the great thing about what he did with Alligator Alcatraz is it wasn't just a great place to speed up the pace of mass deportations. And I'll tell you, the president has had no better ally than the governor and our AG in this mass deportations mission. but it also served as a very powerful deterrent. If in the middle of the night you're staring at the ceiling, wondering if you're going to get hauled off and sent to alligator Alcatraz with the giant mosquitoes and the gators in the canal, then you might take the free flight from Christy Nome and the $1,000 stipend and head back to where you belong and think long and hard about why you broke into our country and stole from us, stole jobs and stole benefits and stole opportunities. And so when Byron sat there and criticized something that the governor, our AG, and the president himself had praised, I thought, well, that's backhanded, but two, that just doesn't seem right at all. And lo and behold, it turns out that just a couple of years ago, Byron Donalds had questioned the efficacy of mass deportations. He said this time last year that he was against illegal immigration, but wanted, quote, anyone from anywhere to come here legally. And I think Governor DeSantis hit the nail on the head a couple of weeks ago. He said that if the federal government put 10 million Somalians in the middle of Florida legally, would that make it okay? And this idea that if it's legal, that somehow it's permissible. No, it is illegal in every sense of the word because it violates the trust between the government and her people. There's a social contract that says that you don't drop off a bunch of Haitians and Somalians in Springfield or in Minneapolis or even in South Florida. The largest Haitian diaspora actually in America is in Broward and Dade County, where I grew up. And so this is personal for me. But that was the first straw. And I can get into a lot of other examples, but one thing that really drove me up the wall was I asked Erica if they were going to move to Tallahassee right away, or were they going to take their time to get acclimated? You know, if they won, would they move right away? And I'll never forget, she looked at me with such condescension, like it was a stupid question to ask. And she said, we're not moving to Tallahassee. The Panhandle's a dump. And I thought, wait, I live in the Panhandle. I know the Panhandle. Done a lot of work in the Panhandle with my nonprofit Incubate Debate, this free high school debate league. A lot of work in Walton County, Holmes County, all over Okaloosa, Escambia. If you hold contempt for an entire region that represents 1.5 million people, you hold actual contempt and you consider that part of the state a dump, any part of the state a dump, then I don't see how you are in a position to lead this state. And the big thing with Byron, who I think is probably a good guy. I think we can have disagreements, but I think he's generally probably a good guy. The big thing I have with him is this is a guy who was on the short list to be the vice president. President Trump didn't think highly enough of him to make him VP. So then what did he try to do? He tried to become a cabinet secretary. I know this firsthand knowledge. He tried to become a cabinet secretary. He wanted to be the HUD secretary, Housing and Urban Development. The president didn't think highly enough of him to make him a cabinet secretary, perhaps because he might not get Senate confirmed. So the president passes him up for VP, doesn't think highly enough of him then passes him up for a cabinet role, doesn't think highly enough of him. And now Florida, the Florida governorship, that's what he wants, sloppy thirds. Dennis, our state is not a consolation prize. It's not.
I think he would push back on you on that one and probably say that if Trump did offer him any of those things, he said, no, I want to be the governor of Florida.
My fear, though, is that he wanted this job because he didn't get 2 other jobs, maybe even a third. He wanted to be Speaker of the House a couple of years ago. You remember that. I just don't think that we're in a position where we want people who are going to climb the social ladder. You asked me earlier, why not run for Congress? I think Congress is full of do-nothings. I think our founders and framers were brilliant. Our federalist system vests the vast majority of power in the state and local government, not in the federal government. It's called the 10th Amendment. I think it's highly underrated. And so I actually have no interest in federal politics. I would never want to run for Congress. If I were to ever do anything, it would be at the state level. And you ask me, I didn't walk away from that dinner saying I'm going to run for governor, but I walked away from that dinner thinking that Byron Donalds is not going to be a qualified candidate. And then I went and had coffee with Jay Collins a couple of weeks ago. And it was after those 2 interactions and a lot of prayer and talking with family and friends that I decided to enter this race quite literally a week ago today.
Okay. So then, one of the things I can tell you that I don't particularly like about Byron Donalds as a politician, again, I don't know him as a human being. I know that he has some questionable things in his background that we're going to get into in 2 seconds here. But my thing is that to be the governor of Florida, you need to do more than just check a box. And I don't question whether or not Trump likes Byron, but I also know that Trump is a very smart man. He's a master marketer, and he knows when he needs to attract a certain audience. So obviously, as an African-American who is a conservative, he was a good person to have at his side to try to get the black vote. So I'm cool with that. I just like if you had a woman next to you to get the woman vote, or if you had a Hispanic guy to get a Hispanic vote.
Fair, but I would disagree with the notion that Byron Donalds had anything to do with the fact that black voters went for Trump, black men in particular. I think it had to do with the fact that they lived through 4 years of Trump in the first term, and they lived through 4 years of the Biden-Harris regime and said, you know what? My dollar went a lot further. My border was a lot more closed. Our streets were a lot safer when a guy named Trump was in the White House. And so I think this idea of bringing token people and having them by your side, woman, black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. I think that and I'm not saying that you're saying this, I'm just saying that a lot of people have said this, that Byron Donalds was key in locking down the black male vote. I mean, I'm in Tampa right now. I could walk and I could talk to 100 black men at barbershops who don't even know who Byron Donalds is,
Yes.
let alone were influenced by his particular line of slop rhetoric that probably honestly does very well with people who look very different from him, not black men. And so,
yeah, and I think the other thing too about Byron that I would love to see. I hope that you get the chance to debate him, because I think Byron has done a great job at learning how to do the 3-minute Fox hit. And as a guy who used to be a regular on Fox News, and then I had my own show on Newsmax, there is a difference between mastering 3 minutes with talking points and having to control an hour of entertainment and information. I don't think he's going to be able to do the 1 hour. I cannot wait to watch him on stage, and I hope that somebody really can dissect him, because I don't think he's right for Florida. I want to read something here that was, you probably saw it, you were mentioned in it. There was a Politico article over the weekend, and somebody retweeted it. And James, they have 7 things listed that is, I guess you would say, a hit list on Byron. 1, he was a registered Democrat until 2010. 2, he defended Trayvon Martin. 3, claimed George Floyd was murdered. 4, buddies with Representative Corey Mills, who is a train wreck. 5, buddies around with Representative Fine. 6, pled no contest to theft in Florida. I think that was in 2014. And then missing millions from charter schools. I don't know what that exactly meant. I also thought I read that he tried pawning off bad checks.
Well, actually, if you go back to 97 and 2000, there's a lot there. He was arrested and charged on 2 separate occasions, the first of which for dealing drugs, the second of which for felony theft, intentionally cashing a bad check. What I care about more, and I think the voters of Florida care about more, is what he's done lately. What have you done for me lately? Or what have you not done for me lately? Well, look, when he was in the state legislature, he didn't sponsor the bill. He introduced the bill. He didn't vote for the bill, which would have been disqualifying. He actually introduced it. And the bill was to let shoplifters steal up to $1,000 and still not be charged with a felony. The previous cap was $300. It had been set in 1983. And then in 2019, his idea was, because of inflation, we should let felons steal up to $1,000. So go in the Apple store, steal a phone, go in the Apple store, steal a laptop, go into a small business, take 5, 10, 15 different things, and you will walk away scot-free.
See, no, I disagree with you, James. I disagree with you. I think it's very important what he did early on in his life, because that sets the mentality for a bill of that kind, in my opinion. But go ahead.
Well, so that's fair. And I don't want to diminish what he did earlier in his life. I believe that as a Christian, we should give people the chance to repent and forgive and to let them move on. I don't think that your worst mistake should be held against you. The problem is, he was arrested and charged twice, one for dealing drugs, one for felony theft. And instead of actually doing something that helps victims, he introduced a bill just 6 years ago in the Florida legislature, the only bill of consequence he really ever introduced, which was to let shoplifters get away with shoplifting. That, by the way, that bill is more liberal than anything out of California or New York. $1,000. Can you imagine stealing $1,000 worth of stuff and not being held accountable?
We've seen the videos, James. We've seen the videos in San Francisco where the cops don't even go after anymore. CVS's. That's what people have to hear from you, or whoever else is going to run against him, is the fact that go and look at those videos of San Francisco. They have at CVS, you can't get a toothbrush, you can't get deodorant because everything's chained up and locked up because people go in there, they pilferage the stores, and they know they're going to get away with it because the cops say, why am I going to arrest him? He's not going to wind up having to pay a fine. He's not going to have to do anything. And so if the people of Florida want to have that sort of mentality leading them, well, then Byron's your guy. Other than that,
Correct.
I'd say no,
Look,
thank you.
If you want social justice, Byron is your guy. If you want to elevate criminals and you give them second, third, fourth, and fifth chances, there are folks out there in our state, let's be honest about that, then Byron Donalds is your candidate. But here's what really grinds my gears is last year, he was cited for not disclosing $1.6 million in congressional stock trades. Now, Nancy Pelosi is the queen of this. But Byron Donalds is right up there with making these unbelievable, eye-watering returns. I spent 10 years working as a hedge fund in the investor, as an investor in the hedge fund industry. And I can tell you that the kinds of trades that he put on, the precise timing was nothing short of impossible. Okay. Every single trade, whether it was a small pharmaceutical company, a large cap manufacturer, every single one was just right on the money. He bought it at 10 on a Thursday. Monday, it popped to 50. This guy has enriched himself to the tune of millions of dollars while in Congress. And here's my crazy idea. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you cannot use your public office for private gain. And it's sad to see that he's done that. That's why I've called for a congressional stock trading ban. I don't think you can go in there and use inside information to screw over mom and pop investors. I think what's often lost in the stock trading narrative is that those profits come from somewhere. If someone sold their stock to you, they lost out on those profits. If you bought their stock from them for $10, they didn't know that you had inside information. So there's a lot of people who got shafted because of this, these unriched gain, these enriching of himself with these unjust gains.
And it just goes in line with the same thing where I look and I say, hey, this guy has a history of questionable dealings. And therefore, you can take the guy out of the crime, but you can't take the crime out of the guy. That's what somebody would say if they were being a naysayer against Donalds. He also championed pretty heavily for H-1B visas, if I'm not mistaken.
That's exactly right. We don't call him H-1 Byron for nothing. I mean, this is a guy, by the way, who is completely bought and paid for by the H-1 lobby. Now, the H-1B lobby, why do they want H-1Bs? Because if they want to hire your son, if they want to hire a graduate from a Florida college like USF or UCF or FSU, they have to pay them a market wage. Instead, they can hire a kid from India, pay them half price, work them double, and if they can complain, they can just deport them by revoking their visa and revoking their job offer. And so this is the issue. It's a very different vision that Byron has for our state. My vision for Florida is we stand up for the dignity of our workers. If you're an American worker, you have to come first. When we've got qualified Americans in our own state who are being denied entry-level jobs, and those jobs are given to H-1Bs from India, China, South Asia, it doesn't matter. That's an abomination. It's an abomination, Dennis, for the fact that if you're denied an opportunity, that's a crime in and of itself. But think about it. If a kid in Florida can't get a job, they don't have an income. If you don't have an income, you can't buy a home. If you can't buy a home, you can't get married. If you can't get married, you can't have kids. If you can't have kids, what is the point? And so Byron Donalds is of the view, and we had a long discussion about this at dinner, is of the view that the H-1B program, while it does disadvantage Americans, it helps American companies. And in his perverted version of America First, anything that helps American GDP or American stock prices is good for the country. My vision for America First is how are our workers doing? For the longest time, you'll know this, Dennis, that the North Star was made in America. But if made in America means made in America by foreign workers from India, that ain't good enough. Made in America by Americans has to be the North Star. And so what I have said is that I would build on what our governor has done right here in Florida. I would tell our universities and colleges they can't hire H-1Bs. I would fire any H-1B at a state agency, whether it's the Department of Corrections or DCF. If you have any H-1B, they're done. We're going to hire a qualified Floridian for that role. And then number 3, Dennis, is if you have a state contract with us, whether you're Deloitte, Accenture, a restaurant, it doesn't matter. You have a state contract with the state of Florida. Now is the time, as President Reagan said, for choosing. Do you want to keep your 50 H-1Bs or do you want to keep your $50 million contract? You pick. There's no negotiating. You do not, as a company, have a constitutional right to our tax dollars to then take them and fire qualified workers who did nothing wrong, except for the fact that they don't want to work for slave-like wages because they have some dignity and they have some purpose in their life. And so my vision is, how can we get workers to get great paying jobs again? The governor has created a real blueprint for this, and I want to build on that.
One of the biggest pains here in Florida is the insurance industry. What would you do to improve the experience for both the insurance companies who are scared that one hurricane comes in and rips them out of business? And what would you do for the people who live in this state who are paying the highest premiums in the country?
Well, I want to give the governor credit because just a couple of weeks ago, as you know, because of litigation and negotiation, he was able to get these massive auto insurance cuts. Still more work to do there. I can tell you, I'm paying more to insure my car in a month than I am on the car payment. And so that just seems weird and wrong, and we have to fix it. At the heart of any unjustly high price is a lack of competition. So how do we bring insurers back into the state? We have to crack down on fraud. We have to be honest that 80% of the fraud can come from less than 20% of the people. I mean, I saw this a little bit growing up, but it's just gotten worse. All these illegals here who have no moral compass. They get hit by a hurricane, and then they're up in there claiming that all the stuff that was in the house wasn't in the house. They perpetuate fraud. And, their thinking is, well, no one's disadvantaged. I just screwed over the insurance company. No. When you perpetuate a false claim to an insurance company, all of the honest people, all the rest of us, we pay for your fraud and your lies. So we got to do two things. Got to bring back competition. And that's premised on cracking down on fraud and actually using state power with respect to FDLE, statewide prosecution, to crack down on this fraud. And then number two, we have to look at litigation reform. I think a lot of insurance companies are fearful that someone who's upset about not getting a claim approved very, very quickly is going to automatically sue up and get $10 million in legal fees. And then the Morgan and Morgans of the world are going to enrich themselves as well. You have to create a fair marketplace where you can do predictable business. Home ownership, the governor's talked about this, but home ownership is not just the cost of the home. It's not just property tax. It's property insurance, and it's also HOA. And there is a real grift happening in the HOA and the condo space. We've got to investigate. I would doge every single HOA. Here's what I would do on day one. I would issue a statewide order to freeze HOA increases contingent on every single homeowner and condo association submitting a 25-page report of the last 5 years of audited financials. If they don't do that, they're out of compliance and they cannot legally raise their HOA fee. This has become an absolute grift. My dad was a tree trimmer for 20 years, and he saw it firsthand. Condo association president pulling him aside and say, I can give you this contract, but I need a 10% kickback. That happens every day, whether it's landscaping, whether it's tile, whether it's roofing, whatever it is. First off, it's criminal. We're going to investigate. We're going to prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law. And the second thing is, I'm going to freeze every single HOA and condo fee and let them go fight it. Let them go fight us in court, as opposed to handing over their audited financials. Because what we're going to find with those audited financials is a lot of people committed a lot of crimes, and they're going to go away for a long time for doing it.
With that in mind, the governor has been pushing heavily. If you live here in the state of Florida full time, you have a home, you've homesteaded that home, he wants to make it where you have no property tax. Now, James, I can tell you straight out, my property tax every year is $33,000. I can think of many different things that would make me more happy to write a check to than the state of Florida. At the same time as I have a lot of respect for the police, and I know our schools need money, and I know there's a lot of services that come through those property taxes. I think Byron Donalds originally said he didn't like the idea, and now all of a sudden has sort of floated the other way. I'll let you speak to that for certainty. But what would be your take in terms of how you would handle that process if DeSantis doesn't get it done before he leaves?
So I think the governor's going to, and the governor's plan I support fully, which is a constitutional amendment to abolish property taxes for any primary homesteaded residents. Now, let's be clear. If you have a second or third home in Destin or in Palm Beach or in Melbourne, you're going to still pay property tax. If you're not a Florida resident, you're going to pay property tax. If you own commercial property, you're going to pay property tax. If you own a hotel, you're going to pay property and occupancy, all those other taxes. So these taxes, we're not getting rid of all this revenue. We're only talking about property taxes for actual homesteaded residents, and that's just a fraction of it. To your point about fire, police, education, I'm with you 100%. The truth is, though, that some of these city and county budgets have exploded in the last 5 years. They used the scamdemic to screw us over. Some of these blue counties like Broward, Orange, Dade, Blaise Golia, our CFO, has done an incredible job of calling out the waste, fraud, and excess. The truth is that they got to get their house in order, and them being parasites and forcing these assessments and these millage rate increases to just constantly take revenue from us, that's unacceptable. If they can get to where they were just way back, as in 5 years ago with spending, everything is going to be perfectly balanced. Now, the last thing I'll say is, in the unlikely event this constitutional amendment does not pass, you need 60%. You actually can do this through the legislature. Here's how you do it. You raise the homestead exemption. The homestead exemption today is $70,000, which means if you owned a house that cost $60,000, anything less than 70, you would pay nothing in property tax. Now, as you can imagine, Dennis, there are very few homes in Florida, perhaps only in rural parts of the Panhandle, that would be $70,000 in assessed value. What you could do at the legislative level is very simple. You could raise the homestead exemption to something like $5 million. And what you would do at that point is any home that's less than $5 million is exempt. Now, the median home price in Florida is $500,000. I wouldn't want to put it there. I wouldn't even want to put it at $1 million. I think this is a moral injustice. I think you have to draw a line somewhere, but I think 5 million, maybe there, maybe a little bit lower. Again, I'll work through that. You got to do it by doing it kind of thing. You can't exactly game it out right here a year in advance, but I fully support, and I'll be campaigning for whatever the governor decides is the right proposal that looks like a full abolition of homesteaded property tax. And if for whatever reason that doesn't pass, I'm going to work on day one with the legislature. My top priority is going to be to increase the homestead exemption to well over $1 million, which means that you, Dennis, would not be paying property tax. I would not be paying property tax. All of your listeners would not be paying property tax. We're going to let these counties figure it out. They figured it out prior to 2020. They can figure it out going forward. And part of that is a lot of this bureaucratic nonsense, a lot of these new red tape bureaucrats who have been hired in the wake of the pandemic to do God knows what. These counties need to have a real reckoning. If you have a business and you lose some revenue, guess what? You got to look at your staff and say, you know what? We have to fire the chief diversity officer. You know what? We don't need 15 accountants. You know what? We can prioritize. But at the end of the day, you need a governor who, like Ron DeSantis, is going to use his bully pulpit to call out the excess, stupidity, and idiosyncrasies of some of these counties and make it very clear who they work for in the eyes of the constituents.
Did Byron originally say that he didn't want to give this property tax plan a go, or was that just BS?
Well, everything he says is BS. I mean, I don't know what he says. He now says he's against the H-1B program, but a student at UF at a Turning Point event 2 weeks ago asked him if he supports James Fishback's plan to fine companies that fire American workers and replace them with H-1Bs. And he said, no, I don't support that. Well, guess what? The president of the United States 2 months ago put out a plan to fine companies $100,000 for every single H-1B. So his own policy position is totally inconsistent with that of the duly elected president of the United States. The truth is, Dennis, your frustration, my frustration, I think a lot of your viewers' frustration with Byron Donalds is you don't know what you're getting. On Monday, it's something. On Tuesday, it's something else. On Wednesday, a donor took him out for coffee. On Thursday, a journalist antagonized him. The guy has no real principles. And look, for the voters of Florida who want somebody with experience, my only respectful pushback to that is, what kind of experience are we talking about? Experience selling out to the H-1B lobby, experience in pushing a legislative bill that would increase the shoplifting cap to $1,000 to allow folks to steal $1,000 worth of crap and get away with it. If you want that kind of experience, with all due respect, Dennis, Byron is your guy. I'm running to do two things: to preserve Governor DeSantis's wins and to make Florida affordable. I've said that I'm going to stop the construction of any AI data center that threatens to raise our electric bills. I've said I'm going to end the H-1B scam by fining companies and firing any of those who work for the state on the H-1B and pulling those state contracts. I've also said that I'm going to continue to work with the federal government to ramp up the pace of mass deportations, because guess what? We got 1.4 million illegals in Florida, and they're not living in the Walmart parking lot. They're living in single family homes. So you want to tackle housing affordability and accessibility? Get the illegals out of our state who broke into our country, who are occupying homes that they have absolutely no business occupying, because their existence in our country is flat out illegal. All of that stems from this vision for Florida.
Okay, so I got two quick questions for you on this before we move into something else. So there is one thing that DeSantis did that I think he could have done much better, to be honest, quite honest. He made it so this way. The rule is, I think if you have 25 or more employees, you must use mandatory E-Verify. But if you're a landscaping company and you've got 8 employees and 7 of them are illegal aliens, you're not covered in that. And that's why we still have an abundance of illegal aliens in this state, because at the end of the day, most small businesses have less than 25 employees. Would you leave that like it, mandatory E-Verify with 25 or more employees, or would you make it where the number was lower down to it's for everybody?
I'd make it 0. If you have more than 1 employee, if you have 1 or more employee, I'd even take it a step further. Dennis, this is not maybe popular, maybe it's not the nice thing to say, but if you are knowingly employing illegal aliens, you're going to be looking at felony charges. I'm sorry. You are aiding and abetting invaders to our country. Because if you're giving an illegal a job, who then on his way home runs over a girl at a bus stop, who on a jog rapes and kills a woman, and you gave him income, you gave him the means to stay in our country, you financially underwrote his existence. Because Dennis, if he didn't have a job, he would have left already and gone back to Guadalajara. He would have gone back to Sao Paulo. And so at some point, if you got a felon, if you've got a runaway prisoner in your basement and that guy go kill somebody, you're going to get charged. And so I don't think it's any different. If you've got someone who, as a first act of entering the United States, broke our laws, and you're aiding and abetting them, and you're knowingly having done that, I'm sorry, we're going to need to arrest some executives. And I don't care if they're the CEOs of agricultural companies in the Florida heartland. We're going to send in the FDLE, and we're going to do a beautiful perp walk. Sadly, we did not get that with James Comey, but we're going to get a beautiful perp walk. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that you got to give it to Mississippi, because Mississippi decided to push the envelope and challenge Roe v. Wade. They knew what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing with that 15-week ban. And if it weren't for the courage of Mississippi doing that, we never would have overturned the worst Supreme Court decision of the 20th century, which of course was Roe v. Wade. I am going to start to push the envelope on a lot of things. And one of those decisions is Plyler v. Doe, 1982. The Supreme Court found that illegal immigrants have a constitutional right to attend public schools. I was in Hendry County earlier this year, out in LaBelle. There were 21 kids in the room, 7 of whom did not speak a lick of English. Think about what that does for your kids and grandkids, that they're in a classroom with kids who don't speak English, and the teacher has to dedicate time and resources and energy toward kids who have no interest in other than being provided free childcare. Let me make it very clear, Dennis. I don't care if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court, because we will win on a 6-3, or depending if she is there, maybe a 5-4. But the truth is, I'm going to push the envelope, because we need to overturn some of this awful Supreme Court precedent from the Warren Court from the 20th century. It's despicable. Illegal immigrants have 0 rights, least of all the right to attend our public schools, even though they don't contribute taxpayer funding to it. And so, you know how you speed up deportations? You tell the kids of illegal immigrants, no, you're not going to school for free. You're not going to come and you're not getting free childcare. And so you pair that with increased deportations, workplace raids, actually going through with the arrests of executives and business owners that knowingly employ illegal aliens. And guess what? That 1.4 million illegal alien number starts to get really, really low. And that's how we address a lot of these bigger issues like healthcare, like insurance fraud. I think everything, Dennis, is going to run through the fact that we've got 1.4 million criminals in our state who do not obey our laws. And as a result, we are paying for it literally with price increases, because when they shoplift, when they commit mortgage fraud or insurance fraud, guess what the insurance companies do? They make us pay for it. When they do auto fraud, the auto insurance companies jack up our premiums to make up for those losses.
Well, look, the other thing, too, you should add into your repertoire when you're going down this road is that, a lot of those property taxes that people pay is for the school. And the schooling of children who are illegal and cannot speak English, in most cases, are 25 to 50% more expensive than that of the English-speaking students. So automatically,
Correct.
by getting the illegal aliens, we would lower everything from health to education. I got you for about another 10 minutes here, so I want to make sure that I get one last question in, and then we've got to talk about some of the things that are hanging over your head. One of the newest reports that has me alarmed is that there is a new large influx of mosques and Muslim-based schools. And right now, the country seems to be at war with this idea that we need to take in more people from the Middle East and from Muslim countries, and most people that I talk to don't like it. There is a video going around. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it. Governor DeSantis put in this great program. I'm a recipient of it, where you get a voucher back if you have your kid in private school and you put it towards the tuition. And there's a video of this one Muslim school. It's got a bunch of different schools here in the state that are taking those vouchers, and it's paying for about 90% of these kids to go to school. They're building these big, beautiful schools. Is there anything that you have thought about yet about what you would do to preserve the Christianity in this state and not allow it to become a big, huge Muslim enclave like that of Dearborn or what we're about to see in New York City happen?
Yes. And let me just straight off the bat say that I was saved by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm an unapologetic Christian, and Sharia law is totally and utterly incompatible with our constitutional system, with our Christian nation. It's completely incompatible. I reject, will never allow any sort of integration, even in the smallest way, of any sort of foreign religious law into our country. The truth is that with these schools, they're a consequence of an open border, not just for illegal immigration, but for legal immigration. When you get Somalis coming here and setting up shop, when you get Pakistanis coming here and setting up shop, they're not assimilating. And this school is the perfect example of that. So you have to tackle this at the source, which is legal immigration. When they're given TPS or asylum or all sorts of whatever BS, you saw it with the Afghan refugees. By the way, Byron Donalds voted for the bill that allowed for reduced vetting of the Afghan refugees after the Biden disaster over there. All of those things come downstream of that. And so I want to be clear that Sharia law is incompatible with our constitutional system. And then number two, any school that is found to be preaching any sort of indoctrination or is found in any way to be cooperating with foreign terrorist organizations, those schools need to be shut down, full stop.
All right. So one of the things you said in the very beginning of this interview was that you are targeting affordability. But when you talk about affordability, there have been a lot, and there's one guy who just seems to have it in for you. He seems to be the one guy who, every time your name comes up, he's the one, this guy, Jordan Schachtel. I don't know who he is, but at the end of the day, he writes a lot of things. So I would like to read to you some of the things he has written on his Twitter page, okay? The James fake it till you make it Fishback saga continues to get more absurd. In a recent court filing, Fishback revealed to a federal judge that he didn't file his tax returns this year. So in addition to the U.S. Marshals tracking down his assets, expect the IRS to get involved too. Now, before you respond, let's get all his stuff out on the table. Sure. James is running for governor, and he continues to preach the need for fiscal reform and discipline. Yet, he owes creditors hundreds of thousands of unpaid loans. He does not file his taxes. He has launched several scam companies. Florida is no place for a serial fraudster. And he goes on. This guy is a disaster. Can't even file his taxes. He has legal and financial issues. He's unfit for Florida. Goes on. The legal troubles for James continue. His Tesla was just repossessed by the U.S. Marshals, and he still owes over $200,000 in civil penalties. Now a new court filing offers more detail into the efforts for him to run from the law. Despite telling a federal judge that he does not have the means to pay his debts, Fishback has been on a shopping spree buying $37,000 in luxury brand accessories with his Chase card in violation of a court order. This is not going to end well for the fake it till you make it candidate for governor. The fish fraud saga continues. This one I'm interested in as well. This is one I'm really interested in. James Fake It Till You Make It Fishback says he's running for governor on Florida on the fierce anti-H-1B platform. As governor, I would end the H-1B scam, he says. But there's one small problem with his advocacy. He doesn't practice what he preaches. When Fishback launched his attempt at a hedge fund earlier this year, he hired an Indian man living in Europe named Kabir Singh Bawa to be the COO of his firm. Bawa, like the other top executives hired from Fishback's debate club, was an intern at Plantier and has zero investment advisory experience. Nonetheless, Fishback hired a non-American from overseas with no experience for the job. You may not know this because Fishback has since amended his SEC filings to remove Bawa from the top execs roster. Bawa has also deleted his X account for reasons unknown. We have included the original documents here, Bawa's X profile, which Fishback has taken pains to hide from the public in his post. Here's a screenshot from Fishback's pitch deck to prospective investors regarding his newly launched ETFs, which were later shut down by the SEC. Now, before you go answering these things, I want to say something to you because I want to set the stage here. I believe I've given you an incredible amount of respect in this interview. I'm going to ask you give it back to me. I don't want run-on sentences and bullshit, and I don't want stuff about Byron Donalds. You could say he could say he is a an operative for Byron. No doubt, maybe he is. Maybe he's getting even paid. Maybe he's even getting paid.
Doing a lot of free work for nothing. If he yeah.
In some of these cases, he has legal documents. I'm assuming that he's not going to put up fraudulent documents, I would hope, but he has documents up there. So there's no doubt from what I've read here that you are facing some mountains. And so I'm giving you the chance right now to unload and explain what they are. And I ask you to do it honestly and take all the time you want.
Well, Dennis, thanks for the opportunity. And I welcome these questions. I'm never going to hide from that. Let me be very clear. I am not rich. I have never been rich. I don't aspire to be rich. I have an awesome family. I was saved by Jesus Christ. Those are my priorities in life, nothing else. I worked at a hedge fund run by a Soros-aligned billionaire by the name of David Einhorn. I worked there for nearly 3 years. When I resigned to start my own firm, I sued my boss for religious discrimination. He then countersued me and used my employment agreement, which said that I am responsible for all of his legal fees in any lawsuit, and used that to push lawfare on me. He's now been suing me for the past 2 years, has never sought any compensatory or punitive damages, never alleged any wrongdoing that would cause him financial harm, but wants to unleash this vendetta against me. So that's the context. There's no creditors. It's just my former boss who I sued first for discrimination, and then him countersuing me.
Do you mind if I ask you how did he actually discriminate you?
It's outlined in a complaint, mocking me for my Christianity, praying before meals, praying at work, asking for leave for the ability to go to church, all of those different things.
Okay. And David Einhorn, is David Einhorn a Christian?
No, he's not. He is a Soros-aligned billionaire who's given millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton. He told me that Donald Trump belongs in prison, but that's for another day. Let me get to the substance of these individual allegations from Jordan, which are just absolutely preposterous. Number one, I have filed every single one of my tax returns, including and especially for the most recent year. So that's just number one. Number two, I have never employed an H-1B. I would never employ an H-1B. My entire firm is premised on the idea of being pro-American workers. In fact, we went to the board of trustees of our partner firm and asked them to allow us to exclude companies that abused the H-1B program because we recognized what they were doing was both morally repugnant and actually compromised the fundamental investment soundness of a company when you're shifting out good American workers for cheap foreign slave labor. Number three, the SEC has never shut down, investigated. That's never, ever happened. Number four, I've never been on a shopping spree. I don't know what he's referring to. If he wants to point to individual items that he thinks I've bought, I don't know that I've ever been on a shopping spree, period. If he wants to comb through my financial transactions where I bought my mom a sweater for her birthday or whatever, but to claim that I'm on some kind of shopping spree, whatever. Now, to the question of the Tesla, my family, I bought this Tesla for my dad. He was using it. It was repossessed because Greenlight was successful in convincing a judge appointed by Barack Obama in New York City that I owed him not money from damages, but I simply owed him legal fees. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is not lawfare and just hand over $250,000, $250,000 of money to my former boss who owes me millions. I'm not going to do that. And so if they want to come take my dad's car in the middle of the night, if they want to do that, so be it. That reflects poorly on them as opposed to me. I am going to never hide from the fact that I'm a kid from a working class background, that my dad was a bus driver, that I went to public schools. I am not rich. I'll never aspire to be. These attacks, Dennis, I welcomed our conversation. I wanted to do it because I wanted to have a real substantive debate about the issues. The fact that Byron Donalds' paid operatives want to hit me on a shopping spree, or the fact that my car got repossessed months ago, that is irrelevant to who can become the next governor.
Well, with all due respect, James, with all due respect, remember, I'm here because this is A, my job. This is what I do for a living. I have a podcast, but B, also because I am vetting you as a voter, somebody who wants to get a governor who speaks like you do in terms of I will say this. You hit the nail on the head in every single last topic that would be important to me and the people who I know and who I represent on this podcast. At the same time I'm going to tell you what I think you have against you. At 30 years old, you don't have a lot of experience in life, and not that you can't be sharp at 30. I mean, you're one of the most articulate people I've interviewed in a very long time. But I've been around long enough to know that if it's just all talking points, like I believe it is with Byron, you wouldn't be able to extrapolate on what it is that you're talking about. So I like the fact that you could extrapolate on a topic. That said, this is the first time where I don't feel like you're extrapolating. So you say that you would never hire an H-1B. Who is Bawa?
Bawa is someone we hired who lived in London because we were building out a potential investment line for Europe. So of course we were going to hire somebody from Europe to build out an investment business in Europe. We decided not to do that. There was not as much lucrative opportunity there. And so we parted ways this past summer. He was never an H-1B. He does not have a foreign visa access to the United States. He is an Indian. So if you want to equate being an Indian with being an H-1B, that seems kind of messed up, even though, to be fair, 71% of H-1Bs are Indians. He was based in Europe. We hired somebody from Europe to build out a European investment operation. We decided not to do that. And so we parted ways.
So then going back to the Tesla, I mean, you said that you're not a wealthy man, and that's sort of an out there statement, because somebody who has $500,000 in the bank may consider themselves not wealthy. But then if you talk to somebody who lives in, a low income area, they'd be like 500,000. You know what I would do for that? So to buy a Tesla, I mean, a Tesla is not exactly a cheap truck or a cheap car, depending on which one you bought. I mean, so you bought your father a Tesla. I mean, it wasn't even you bought it for yourself. You bought it for your father. So that sounds like you got a couple of bucks.
Well, I bought it on, to be fair, Dennis, I bought it on eBay. I bought it used on eBay. We drove out to Dallas to pick it up. It was $50,000 or something, right? I mean, I didn't, I think it'd be one thing if they confiscated a Bentley. They confiscated a 3-year-old Model Y Tesla, right?
Okay.
And they did that because a judge exacted a penalty for me not paying their legal fees. And I'm just telling you right here, right now, on the record, I'm not going to pay $250,000 in my billionaire ex-boss's legal fees when he is pursuing lawfare against me. If you want to come and you want to take my car and you want to take this, that, the other, so be it. I'm just not going to play that game. I'm not going to give in.
Is it fair to say that some of what it is that we're reading in these documents are a toggle between sort of skirting the fact that you don't want to pay because you don't believe you should pay? I think we've all been there where we've had, and I'm not defending you, I'm defending the situation. We've all had somebody come after us for unfair reasons, like, no, I'm not paying it. I'm just not paying it. And you figure a way not to pay it. Is that kind of like what we're doing right now?
Well, yes, sure.
Okay.
The truth is that when my former boss, who is worth $5 billion, is trying to pursue a $250,000 judgment that a judge, the same judge who ruled against President Trump earlier this year in New York City, that he wants to use that as a means to confiscate my family's assets, my dad's own car, technically legally in my name, but my dad was using it. He needed that car. If that's his game that he wants to play as revenge for me suing him first, leaving his firm and starting a competitor, that's fine. Now, look, if this was a genuine debt that I took on because it was a student loan or a credit card debt, I think that's very different. My billionaire ex-boss is going to do just fine without $250,000 from me and my family. What he should do.
Why would a billionaire go after little old you? I don't understand that. Why go after you?
Because there's a lot of ego in the hedge fund world. There's a lot of ego. I didn't leave on the best terms. I left in the middle of the year. I left him with a lot of positions that he didn't quite understand, the macro bets that I had put on. I'm not allowed to get into, of course, those individual positions. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of petty ego. I've never seen so much bruised personality over all of this. And part of the reason why I left this world and built my own thing is because I didn't want any part in the hedonistic, wealth obsessed, secular, just disgusting, despicable culture. I am someone who the number of parties I've been to in my life, I could count on one hand. Seriously. I believe that Sundays are for church, family, rest. I'm not someone of extravagant means. I never have been. I don't ever want to be. But I do respectfully, Dennis, want to say to this experience thing, because we didn't talk about it. One, I'm not a big fan of credentialism. I think that if I went to Harvard Law and I told you I did all these great things at McKinsey and in New York City, that does not give me a permission to run for governor. The permission I am seeking is the permission from Florida voters to earn their trust. Here's what I will say. I spent 10 years as an investor who stood up to Wall Street. I sued the Federal Reserve earlier this year in federal court over what I saw as Jerome Powell keeping interest rates too high for political reasons despite President Trump. I sued. I put my money, my resources on the line to sue the Federal Reserve chairman over this in federal court in Washington, D.C. And then when President Trump fired Lisa Cook, that mortgage fraudster, I personally filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Supreme Court defending his right to remove corrupt federal officials. I built something called Incubate Debate. It's a free high school debate league I started in 2019. High school debate changed my life. I wanted to bring it to more rural counties all over the state. We had our 42nd tournament just a couple months ago in Jacksonville. Kids from 17 counties all over Florida, from Pensacola to Miami. It's a totally free debate league. We've had Vivek Ramaswamy come out, Neil Gorsuch, all sorts of great conservatives and even progressives come out and judge these debates. I'm in Tampa right now, just a couple blocks away where I last saw my friend Charlie Kirk, who's really an inspiration for me, and using the power of debate to help kids understand how to think clearly and speak on their feet and remind all of us what America really is about, which is we don't resort to violence. We resort to open discussions and free speech. And so,
James, if people want to learn more about you, where would they go? What's the website?
They would go to fishback2026.com. I'll just say this in closing. I'm going to visit all 67 counties. I'm never going to ask people to blindly trust me. I want to earn your vote. I want you to ask me questions. Here's the thing too. I don't want you to donate. In this economy, I don't expect anyone to donate. I would ask if you could volunteer for our campaign. If you can make calls, if you can send text messages, go to fishback2026.com. Sign up to volunteer.
James, you can't end on that. I have to ask a question. How are you going to compete against a guy who's got $30 million in the bank already, probably going to get a lot more when Trump starts making phone calls for him? How are you going to go up against that with no money?
Well, I can't sell the Tesla, obviously. I guess I'll have to sell the $37,000 of stuff. He never tells you what the stuff was, but it was a shopping spree. When was it? What did I buy?
But seriously, I mean, how are you going to be able to compete? I mean, that almost seems a little unrealistic.
So here's how I think we end up competing. I got a massive endorsement this morning from Daniel Fogenholy, who serves on the State Board of Education. He was appointed by Ron DeSantis, oversees 3 million kids, K through 12, our state colleges. I am doing 6 events this week in 5 different counties. Our launch video, Dennis, has 4 million views. I don't believe we're going to need to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. Byron Donalds has money. I think we have a vision. I'm going to take that vision on the road. I did CNN last week, News Nation, Fox News. I'll be on Abby Phillips' debate show twice this month. I'm going to go anywhere and everywhere to make this vision for Florida well known to the voters. And if folks want to contribute, they can, but I'm never going to ask people in this economy to turn over their hard-earned money. What I'd more so appreciate is the ability to volunteer a couple hours a week to our campaign to put Florida first.
All right, James. Well, I'm going to make a last statement to you. Either you are the most smooth, greatest con man of all time, or you have really, really prepared to understand the fight that Floridians are up against once DeSantis leaves. And if you're the con man, which I'm going to pray that you're not, that's going to wind up coming out sooner or later. You could only go to so many corners before there's not another corner to run to. If you are a passionate, honest human being who just says, screw it, I'm going for it, which is really a cut from my own cloth. I can tell you, you got the balls of steel, man, because because you know what these documents are that you have in front of you. You know that this David Einhorn or whatever his name is going to wind up trying to do whatever he can to make ads out to make you look like a piece of shit. I mean, you are the David going against the Goliath times 10. So I give you credit for that. Either you're con man crazy or you are passionate and an unstoppable force. Only time will tell. I can tell you I'm going to be watching very, very closely. I appreciate you taking the time and assuming that you are coming at this from the real genuine place of I'm a Floridian and I feel like I got to do my part. Well, then you wouldn't need $1.
I hope we'll see you at the UF debate that Byron and I have both been invited to. The college Republicans debate at UF.
I thought he wasn't showing up.
Well, we'll see what happens. I've accepted. There's an open invite. His team is aware of it. They're processing it, but I'd love to have you there in person. Let's have a long form debate. No talking points. Let's go for an hour and a half and give the people the debate they deserve.
I think it'd be great. James, thanks so much, bud. I appreciate you.
Thanks, DML. Appreciate it.
See you there. All right. I will say this. James is a smooth talker. And, you know, when you know what you're talking about, you can be smooth. You could be passionate. You could be both things. So I think James, he's well prepared. And if he's not a con man, wow, what a story. What a story. A 30-year-old kid who had everybody up against him, goes and runs for Florida governor, the most important state in the union. And just, wow, what a story. So let's watch how this unfolds. I'm not going to judge either way at this point. I think it would be unfair of me, and I just don't have an answer at this point. There's a part of me that likes him. He's got balls. And there's the part of me that just says, some of those answers he gave aren't necessarily deep enough. But like I said to him, and I'll say to you, the truth always surfaces. You can run from it, but eventually it's going to catch up with you. And if everything he's saying is honestly true, then he has nothing to worry about, and Byron does. The flip to that, this kid will crash and burn. Time will tell. Until the next time, may God bless you, our troops, these United States, James, Byron, and all the great people in Florida. We'll talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.